very special happening for the summit. I show you a certificate of appreciation. This came through the Furniture Share House. We were just delighted. Kate Bialo recognized us because of the work. If you remember, in the last 2-3 years, the money from the lawsuit in Mamaroneck Village, that our group was asked to help disseminate the money that came from the law firm. It was a very special group that put this together, and I thank Doreen Cushell for heading that group, and I was just very honored. I had no idea. A lovely event. Furniture Share House honored the summit. So with great thanks to all those of you who worked on that. All right. We have one other question that I have for you all, and maybe Elaine has another. Any of you who worked on the human rights part of our group, please meet with me a few minutes afterwards. We've been asked, Valerie O'Keefe is very concerned about the Human Rights Commission not functioning in the same way, and we want to be a part of helping with the Martin Luther King event. So please, just meet with me afterwards. A few of you have been very involved with this before, and I would just like to ask anyone interested for those few minutes. All right. Now, anything else that you are concerned about, Elaine? All right. Now we'll turn our very, very important panel. First of all, we'll have our introductions, of course. We'll go around, and each one of you, please say who you are, what your group is. If you come from a group, if you're an individual, we're delighted to have you. You don't have to have a group behind you. We want citizen participation here. So we will start. As I've said, I am Mary Lee Berridge. We'll wait for our panel to let you introduce them. So we'll go here to Mary.
And I'm Mary McDonald. I care.
You heard that. Mary McDonald, I care. All right. Shoko Wada, the Summit Board. Wonderful. Jimmy.
Jim McDonald, Cap Center, and Post Community Service.
Cheryl Louie, Chair of the Westchester County Planning Board and former Mayor of Larchmont.
Good morning, Keith Yiza, Mamaroneck Cap, Summit, and Mamaroneck Public Schools.
Iris Freed, Hope Community Services.
Bill Shaker, resident of Mamaroneck.
George Latimer, State Assemblyman. Quick announcement. Governor's announced $3 billion in program cuts. Affects a lot of people in this room. Be in contact with Susie and me as soon as you can. Thank you.
Amy Ross, Westchester Jewish Community Services Caritas Home Program. Judy Gavra, Summit and Campus. Maria Luna,
Can we go to Harold here?
Harold Wolfson, local summit, and also the Hispanic Resource Center.
Elaine Chapnick, co-president of Summit.
Jeffrey Weiner, Summit, and Hispanic Resource Center.
Mariana Boleo, Summit, Family Theater.
We were real good at home on the sound. Kate Moody, independent writer.
Carol Matkowski.
Doreen Fischel, day laborers, Summit, and Aging Place. Home on sale.
Judy Lawrence, Larchmont Mamaroneck Community Counseling Center.
Ernie Ricketts, Rhinex School System.
Kay Francis, Richards, Mamaroneck Larchmont Human Rights Committee.
George Roniger, Town Planning Board and the Larchmont Garden Civic Association.
Heidi Sickles, Summit, and the Rhinebeck Board of Education.
Penny Ober, Summit.
Lynn Reichstadt, Summit, At Home on the Sound, and Cap Board. We're having 2 meetings for At Home on the Sound, Wednesday afternoon a week and Thursday evening, as a quick update and to get people to volunteer as we enter phase 2. So if you're interested, please contact me afterwards or by phone.
Rob Waldman, Center for Aging in Place Support and the Volunteer Center. And a quick announcement from us also, the Center for Aging in Place Support is having a fun event on October 27th. It's going to be a sing-along with the Golden Apples a cappella chorus, and it's also a fundraiser for our organization, which helps groups like At Home on the Sound and about a dozen other groups around the county form aging in place organizations. I have just a limited number of invitations here, so if you are interested, please see me afterwards.
Zoe Colon, new Executive Director of the Hispanic Resource Center. Friday, November 13th is our annual benefit honoring Mariana Bormillo and welcoming myself. And it promises to be a fun event every year, so please come out. It's great.
Yeah, Reva Greenberg, from the Westchester Palliative Care and Ends of Life Coalition, and we are having on the purple and white brochure you have there, we're having a major conference here, bringing in all the stars. It's free. It's at the county center. We have a 400 cutoff and 200 people registered already. So I hope the rest of you will quickly sign up.
John Gibbons, photographer for the summit. Professor at Bridges College and chair of the Hispanic Resource Center. And again, I urge you all to show up for our party. We throw a great party.
Certainly do.
Give everybody.
Go ahead.
Jane Ely, I'm on the Board of Assessment Review for the town.
Board of Assessment for
The town of Mamaroneck.
Town of America. Wonderful. Very good.
Hi, good morning, I'm Ann McAndrews, I'm a trustee of the Village of Larchmont.
Good morning, I'm Nina Rescio-Cuddy. We have a debate. I'm the president, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Larchmont Mamaroneck. I want to remind everybody that tonight we're having the debates for the candidates for the Village of Mamaroneck. It will be held in the Village Courthouse. We also are doing something we haven't done before. There's four uncontested local elections. Judy will be in her running uncontested, and also Town of Mamaroneck. So we've decided to have a question and answer period. Ernie will be there so that at least there'll be an opportunity for people to ask questions, even though there won't be someone running opposite these candidates. And another announcement, our next breakfast is on November 5th on Friday at Hector's Village Cafe, and we will be having the head of the local national physicians for healthcare program. She will be trying to help us go through the maze of healthcare reform. It's at 8:15 at Hector's on the first Friday of November. And you're all invited.
Jean Marie Brescia, Mamaroneck Town Justice.
Janet Buckbinder, the Summit, Mamaroneck Board of Education, and Radar.
Hi, Richard Winslow, Washingtonville Housing.
Ernie Odierna, Councilman, Town of Mamaroneck.
Anna Denoy, Director of Community Services and Housing for the Town of Mamaroneck.
Steve Altieri, Mamaroneck Town Administrator.
Wonderful. Welcome all, and we're very grateful to LMC-TV for being here, and we thank you as well. Now, on to our program. Judy Myers.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Judy Myers, Summit member and county legislator. We are here today to discuss some very important and exciting news with regards to a housing settlement. I am going to talk briefly about the legislative aspects of it, and then I will introduce, actually we're waiting for Sue Gary, who is stuck on the hutch in bad traffic. So she was coming down from the Bedford area. She will be here shortly, however. But to my right is Deborah DeLong, who is the Assistant Director of, or the Director of Housing. I'm sorry, I demoted you. She is the Director of Housing for the County of Westchester. And next to Deb is our own Jeremy Ingpen from the Washingtonville Housing Alliance, who will talk about the implementation of affordable housing in this area and some of the obstacles that we always are able to give our best at hurdling. So I will just begin with background. I don't know how many of you are familiar. There was a lawsuit that was brought against the County of Westchester 3 years ago by a housing not-for-profit, an affordable housing not-for-profit, who claimed that their charge or their claim was that Westchester County had accepted and applied for and accepted CDBG grants, which I think you probably all heard the term thrown around here from time to time. It's community development block grants, which are federal grants that come to villages and towns through Westchester County. The county applies on behalf of all of the villages and towns and then sorts out the money according to need. for all sorts of things, especially affordable housing and some of the infrastructure that needs to go along with affordable housing. Cities apply directly to CDBG, and in Westchester County, every single municipality save one is part of the consortium that applies for this funding that comes from our federal income taxes. The housing advocacy group claimed that the county had fraudulently applied for and accepted these funds because it did not look at all of the impediments to fair housing in Westchester County, and I think we've heard it here, we've heard it a lot of times when we've had discussions about affordable housing. The county has tended to view the affordability, the lack of affordability, the priciness of our property as probably one of the biggest impediments to fair and affordable housing. This lawsuit maintained that we did not look at the issue of race as an impediment to fair housing, meaning that we were spending money for affordable housing in areas that were well integrated already, and that in essence we were contributing to segregation by building affordable housing in areas that already had large populations of African Americans and Hispanics. And the lawsuit maintained that in doing so, we were effectively adding to segregation. So this lawsuit came forward. They took about 2.5 years to, with working between the county administration and this group to try to settle this lawsuit. They did ask a judge for a summary judgment. The summary judgment came back that indeed the judge felt that the county had made this mistake and had falsely claimed these CDBG funds. The county reached out to the Justice Department in Washington, and the Justice Department actually came in and opined that it too felt that the county was at fault here. And the lawsuit was brought to the attention of the Board of Legislators this summer, and we were urged to settle the case rather than have it go to a trial, a jury trial, largely because it would have been an extremely expensive, very, very expensive case had we been judged guilty of this false claims crime. And Sue is here. She'll be here in 1 minute. So, the legislature in mid-August quickly ended any thoughts of summer and settled down and started basically backpedaling, looking at absolutely everything, talking to every expert we could find, talking to the attorneys who had been involved on our behalf, and also we were given a settlement agreement that had been worked out between the administration, the attorneys, and the Justice Department, and HUD, and given 45 days to come up with, to approve this settlement. Or if we didn't approve the settlement agreement, we would move towards a jury trial. And the 45 days ended on September 24th. And so between August 15th and September 24th, I would say that the board did an extreme amount of due diligence. We've quickly formed committees. We quickly put together our attorneys who happen to be legislators. We're very blessed with, actually one of our legislators is an attorney with and a partner with the very same law firm that worked on behalf of the day laborers. Now I'm going to blank on their name. Dewey LaBeouf. So it was Dewey Valentine and LaBeouf that came together, and so they were actually able to go in and meet with the Justice Department, meet with the individual who was being recommended as a monitor who would work with the county and the federal government as a liaison to make sure that the county was able to implement put together a plan. And the resulting plan is what you have here in your brochure. This did come to a vote before the County Board of Legislators. The vote was, I believe, 13-4 in favor of settling this case. I voted in favor of settling this case rather than move to the jury trial. And frankly, my concern was knowing that Westchester County has for years worked towards getting affordable housing in Westchester County, knowing that our communities here have been trying to establish affordable and workplace and workforce housing, not wanting to have an ugly pall cast over all of the good work that we have been doing by going into a jury trial. And I felt personally that this settlement was better than going into a jury trial. So what I'd like to do is introduce Sue Gary.
Good morning.
Fresh from the hutch.
And I guess none of you shared that because you're all here.
We're all here.
Larchmont
Yeah.
Mamaroneck, and I came down.
Sue is the assistant to the county executive, works in the county executive's office, and has been charged ably with helping us work towards meeting the terms of this housing settlement. So I will turn this over to Sue, and then if you would turn it over to Deb afterwards.
I did miss some of what Judy's introduction was, but I want to thank you first of all for coming and having an interest in this topic. It's very important to the whole community. And as Judy was saying, creating fair and affordable housing is something that the county itself has been committed to, and all of the communities around us. One of the most important things to remember as we move forward is that there was no assertion that any one community did anything wrong, didn't do their fair share of creating this housing. It was really a reporting issue on the county's behalf, and it was something that had been done and reported in a way for the last 30 years, administration to administration, and it was our belief and understanding that we were doing the right thing, and in fact, based on a regulation, the reporting wasn't as thorough as perhaps the federal government was looking for it, and with the new change of administration, there's an increased emphasis on reporting regarding racial and ethnic diversity in communities.
Do you mind talking up a little bit because there's a blower back here?
Sure. So basically, I just want to reiterate that it was a reporting issue that got us into this lawsuit, and the fact that the Obama administration is focusing more on the development of fair housing going forward. And so this is something that we are actually modeling for the rest of the country, because the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development wants to see what Westchester can do in terms of affirmative marketing, working to increase the diversity of populations. What we have here, and I think it'll be interesting if you want to take a look at it after we talk, is basically just the communities and areas that are impacted. It's entirely based on the 2000 census figures and based on racial and ethnic populations in certain communities as of the 2000 census. So many rightly say that in 2010, when the new census comes out, there may be quite a change to how the makeup of the communities is in terms of diversity of populations. However, this is what we're living with right now. The blue areas, just for your information, as you know, we have to build 750 units. In the blue areas is the primary area where we can build all the units there, but we must build at least 630 of the units there. The green and yellow areas are also have different population numbers, and we can build only up to 60 units in each of those areas. It's first based on a municipal assessment of population, and then it goes all the way down to the census block number. So within certain communities, there's different tiers of what qualifies and what doesn't. with that said, the stipulation is quite complex. All of the new units do not need to be new construction. Up to 25% can be existing development, improved properties. There's an allowance for senior housing. The senior housing has to come after certain tiers of non-senior housing are built. However, seniors can qualify for any of the housing. They're not excluded from applying. And one common misconception that has made the rounds in sort of the public sphere of this is that there's going to be a selection process that will force diversity upon communities. The entire process that we are undertaking is simply affirmative marketing. It's casting a wide net to make sure that everyone in the community who wants to be qualified for this housing may be qualified. Then we will go through a process of verifying credit and income as we normally do, and in all likelihood the selection process will be based on a lottery of some sort, using just that pool that does qualify. We are really in the very beginnings of the development of the implementation plan. Anyone who's taken a look at the stipulation knows that there's a laundry list of deliverables that we need to produce, from legislative initiatives to new policies for the distribution of CDBG money, for the county's open space money, outreach that we need to do, which is a part of why we're here today. We're looking for all good ideas. We see this as a 7-year process. We're going to tap every corner of the real estate market, the development market, the communities, the municipalities. Nothing is going to be built without complete community outreach. There is no plan to build 750 units in communities based on an allocation. And there has been some discussion of that, and I believe it's addressed in the brochure. We're going to find the low-hanging fruit where we can find it, find the community support, and build where we can, and build towards the 750 units. There's absolutely no intention of saying Larchmont gets 10 units, Mamaroneck Town gets 10 units, Yorktown gets 50 units. We're going to do what the communities and the real estate and development market will support, and we're going to do our very best. And to the extent that we reach our limit in terms of what's developable, what units are there that we can add money to create gap financing to make it affordable, we are there to show our best efforts to the monitor and to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and there is some allowance in the stipulation to have adjustments made. But we're just here to begin a process of best efforts. The Board of Legislators has created a subcommittee that's working with us on the implementation plan. The Municipal Officials Association has created 2 subcommittees, to my understanding, one of elected officials to oversee and contribute to our implementation plan, and one of their representative zoning attorneys and counsel who are going to be very helpful with us, because one of the things that we have to produce is a municipal zoning ordinance that we would like to promote to the community to provide added incentives for more fair and affordable housing, and in that respect it relates to not having local preferences for your residents so that the populations remain exactly as they are today. There seems to be some flexibility for workforce housing, but really the interest of the federal government is that municipalities don't create fair and affordable housing that's only for their existing residents, which then kind of just preserves the status quo in terms of the diversity of that community. So that's where we're at. We tentatively have, we've requested an extension of the implementation plan deadline that was supposed to be December 8th. We're looking at the end of January. We're waiting for confirmation of that, and we're hoping that that will come this week to give us more time to do outreach to the communities, to see what the input is, what the thoughts and ideas are, and if anyone in this room or anyone you know has any ideas about developments that are in trouble that could use resuscitation perhaps as a fair and affordable housing project, other ideas for developments, we are all ears. We are meeting constantly around the clock with anyone who has an idea about a new project, turning an existing 4-family home that could serve our purposes. No project is too big or too small for us to consider, and we'll be there. So I'm going to turn it over to Deb now, who is our expert in the development of this housing, and she just has a few words to say on how we put these projects together. Do you want some coffee?
Good morning. My name is Deborah DeLong, and I'm Director of Housing for the Department of Planning in Westchester County. I only want to say a few things about how we work with developers, local governments, or anyone who's interested in affordable housing. The county has a long history, an unusual history in my experience, in working towards affordable housing to the degree that it will do land acquisition or support infrastructure improvements for the development of housing. I've got to tell you, I've worked in different parts of the country, and this is very unusual, and I'm really pleased to have been working here to do this. The county also provides technical assistance to developers or people, not-for-profits, anyone interested in working towards affordable housing. Like Sue said, nothing is too large or too small. We will talk to anyone and really look at how best to approach a development idea or redevelopment idea. The brochure that you have actually talks a little bit about production, about the number of units that were actually completed between 1998 and mid-year this year. What it doesn't include is we have hundreds of units in development or under construction right now. So we're actually seeing that there is a lot of interest and a lot of work towards affordable housing. As an example of what the county has done and completed, or at least supported, because I won't say the county does this alone, we do it in concert with other funding organizations like the state government, private foundations, there's private lenders, there's housing investors, and so they're very complicated packages, or can be complicated, not always, but can be complicated packages. But along the window you'll see different sizes and shapes. Some are very urban in nature because that's what fits in that community. Some are very low rise, low scale, and really fits in those communities. So as we work towards the implementation plan, we will be looking to work with people to really make whatever the resulting development be, really fit in the community. Besides the window boards, I have only a couple of these, but if anybody's interested, we have examples of how some of the developments work. I don't know if you want to take them and just pass them around. There's only like 10 or so, but if you want to. Yeah, I have different things here, yeah. Oh, I see, yeah. Okay, and it just, again, it kind of shows the different funding streams that come in, and then also the income levels. One thing that's, very apparent to me, but not maybe to a lay person, is that, okay, I'm sorry, if you can't hear me, just wave and I'll wave back. Thank you, sorry. One of the things that's very apparent that no matter how affordable we try to make it, you still need a minimum income to live there. And I think that's something else that's stressed in the brochure, that there's like income bands that we ultimately live with. There's a cap that we always look at, but you still need to pay the rent, you still need to make your mortgage payment, even if you live in affordable housing. It's not free housing. So we're, one of the processes in terms of selecting the residents is not only are they income qualified and meet other criteria, if it's a home ownership, the lender is going to very much want to see that you have a good credit record and a good history of paying your bills. And that's true in rental housing too. Property managers do credit report checks as part of the process. They check on past tenancy. So I just want to make it really clear that we're working towards affordable housing for people who live in the community and be productive members of the community. Also here today, and again, if you want to pass them around, I have the income guidelines. And again, it's a small handful of them. These are all online. If anybody's interested in looking online for them. Okay. Okay. One of the things that I would like to share with everyone is that besides just building new housing, there could be some very creative strategies that we've worked with. We've talked to people about kind of like living above the store. If there's downtowns where there's storefronts, but the upstairs is vacant, they could be adaptively reused for affordable housing. Older structures, we've seen old factories redeveloped into affordable housing. There's all sorts of ideas that if you look around your community, you probably could identify properties that could be reused. And in this environment of green and environmentally friendly, the idea of taking existing property and reusing it is very appealing instead of taking raw land and redeveloping it. In a couple of cases, we've talked to Jeremy about some ideas he has in his area, and we've also talked to the town about some ideas that they've had. Besides the housing development and like the substantial rehab or adaptive reuse, the county also works on to assist existing property owners to make their buildings preserve them as existing housing in areas where income qualified people live. We have a lead abatement program. We'll do activities that preserve the housing, replace boilers, replace roofs, things like that. The county also provides rental assistance to income qualified households who need a little bit of help to pay the rent, because as you know, housing costs in Westchester are so high. And we do work with not-for-profit agencies that provide home ownership assistance, home buyer education, down payment assistance, and things of that nature. I think that kind of covers very quickly all of the things that we're involved with, and I guess I will let Jeremy talk about what his efforts locally.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Judy. I'm going to sort of riff on the theme because it's a huge subject. I've got age-related blindness, so I have to switch glasses. So I'm going to speak as Executive Director of Washingtonville Housing Alliance, and our mission statement says that we exist to support the continuation of communities that are mixed income, multi-generational, ethnically diverse, and to strengthen those communities. So we stand very clearly, that's where we stand. But I'm also going to speak as a newcomer, outsider, who came to Westchester 3 years ago. And Westchester exhibits patterns of residential exclusivity. It is a shock to an outsider coming here. And if you read the outstanding study of Westchester put together by the Hudson River Museum, beautiful big book, you will see that as these suburbs were created, they were explicitly created as exclusive upscale settlements. And interestingly, when the Bronx River Parkway was designed as the first of its kind in the world, there was no parking allowed on the edge of the parkway in case those urban people coming up to escape should stop and picnic and spoil this idyllic countryside that had been created. So this pattern of residential exclusivity gets codified into zoning and land use restrictions. It gets coded where a whole town is limited to single-family housing except a very restricted central zone. The northern part of the county is complicated by the reservoir and the land rights and the fragile land and very restricted land for development, but the same still applies. So this settlement is very interesting because although it attacks the question on very narrow grounds, which is the way that new law is made, it attacks the county on the grounds of false claims, it attacks an underlying pattern of residential exclusivity. And the underlying question is, if you accept federal funds for your community, can you not affirmatively promote fair housing, or can you not affirmatively promote federal law? Well, we've seen this with highway funding. All states had to adopt a drinking age of 21. We've seen this with college sports. All colleges had to desegregate sports or risk losing federal funds. So it's a very, very interesting challenge that we face, and frankly, coming down here, I never expected to find myself in the midst of such a hot spot of controversy about patterns of residential life. So what do we see? You know, at one extreme we see communities of one color, I see this every day, walking down the hill from Scarsdale to Hartsdale Station, and communities of another color are walking up the hill for domestic help and nannying jobs. Now, help me a moment. There are two golf clubs. There's Bonnie Briar, and then as we go up towards Old White Plains Road, there's a very prestigious golf club there.
Wingfoot.
Wingfoot, right, there we go. And we see the Mercedes driving up the hill to Bonnie Briar and Wingfoot, and we see the landscapers and the groundskeepers walking up the same hill from Mamaroneck Village or from New Rochelle. In the case of Wingfoot, there's no sidewalk, so they walk at some peril on that very windy road. These are all patterns of residential exclusivity. So they raise a number of questions. There's a legal and constitutional question, which I'll leave to the lawyers. You know, if a community accepts federal funds, what is its duty to affirmatively promote fair housing? There's a moral question. What kind of community do we want to live in? Where do we want our emergency workers, our service workers, our nurses aides, our teachers, our elderly, our handicapped, our aunts, our uncles, our grandmothers? Where do we want them to be housed? And should our community accommodate this? It's a fundamental choice. And then there's the practical question, and Deb was beginning to address that. How do you make this happen? And we operate with a very simple concept in affordable housing. You talk to everybody. In Westchester, it's impossible. It's fully built up. It's fully developed. There is no land. So what do? You manufacture the land. You create the land so that new development can happen. So we manufacture sites for housing. How? You eliminate barriers to higher utilization of existing space. You reuse existing sites, brownfield sites, disused sites. As Deb said, you promote residential development over existing retail and commercial space. And you could, as the state of Vermont did statewide, allow accessory apartments if they don't exceed X percent. In Vermont, it's 30% of the existing building. By right, in the state of Vermont, anywhere, anyone can create an accessory apartment. That is a scandal in our exclusive residential neighborhoods. Imagine who might be living in those accessory apartments. Might be your sister when she's had a mental breakdown and is living on Social Security and has nowhere else to live. So these are the questions about fundamental choice that we have to answer before we really begin to state the case for creating affordable housing. I would argue that over the last 10 years there have been some fundamental distortions in the housing market. You see it in the tear down of the 50s ranch that was some form of affordable housing and is now being replaced by a mini McMansion. That's eliminating step-up housing stock. I think you also see it when downtown housing next to the railroad station in the floodplain that historically is where we create our workforce housing is built as upscale condos. There are how many of those units created in the village of Mamaroneck in the last 3 years, and they're not the next step up of housing from the stock we have. They are up here. Those are fundamental distortions, and they're to do with the availability of financing. They're also to do with the horrendously complicated process of permitting and the unpredictability of getting permits, which create a lead time in permitting a project that make a developer say, this is going to take me 2 years to get through all the hurdles. I better get an extra profit of 100,000 a unit, or else I'm going to lose my shirt. Which leaves it to the affordable housing developers operating with some kind of a operating subsidy, hopefully, to spend the 2 to 5 years to permit that project and get it created. But once we solve those problems and have discovered the land that we can create, or the way that we can create additional units, then in fact we create very high quality homes built to very high standards. I am not shy to say that the 726 Old White Plains Road, you set that side by side against what Trump built over the parking garage in New Rochelle. And his is cheap construction. Ours is quality construction. His is designed to fall apart in 25 years, and who cares because someone has bought it. The cheapest possible heating system is installed. What we would put in a trailer in a mobile home in Vermont is what he installs in his upscale condo. It's a scandal. We can't get away with that because we're using federal funds. We're under the oversight of the county, who is very strict, the state, who is very strict, and usually federal standards. So these units are built to very high standards. We also tend to have 50-year, 40-year affordability covenants on them. And in that case, we have to think about life cycle costs for 40 to 50 years. So we better think about quality ingredients. And then if you have the units, what happens? You get families and children into stable, this is the biggest and most exciting thing. You get families and children into stable, long-term housing. You get the kids into good schools, and then you get a generational escape from poverty. Then you get the kids who get an education and go off to college. Now, we have another problem. If they don't come back from college, go out somewhere and come back when they've got a young family and find they can't afford to move back here, that's a different problem. It's the end of this cycle. But you get families into affordable housing, and you do create a real escape from poverty. So, and you begin to create balanced communities, diverse in age, race, income levels. And Scarsdale has a horrendous problem. You've created this affluent community where people buy in to go to the schools, they pay the staggeringly high property tax, and they can't afford to retire there. Unless you're exceptionally privileged, you can't afford to retire there, because why would you pay $50,000 to $100,000 a year just for your carrying costs? Where do your emergency workers come from? And it's very interesting to look at, I don't know if Kathy Sabol is here, I don't think she is. You look at the addresses of your fire chief, of your building inspector. Just run through your town officials and see how many are driving an hour down the road, an hour and a half down the road. What happens when your local people are having to come in that far? How does that affect things? So then we get to the mechanisms, which Deb has addressed. She hasn't mentioned land trusts. There are ways of attacking this to create home ownership, where you hold part of the equity in a land trust, or a community organization holds part of the equity, so we can create home ownership with someone who can't buy into a $500,000 house, but they can buy into a $300,000 house. And the other $200,000 is held in a land trust, and we begin to create shared equity. We've talked about affordability covenants. One of the problems in the first round of affordable housing, we have done 14 affordable home ownership units, but I think they only had 10 or 15-year affordability covenants on them. So that after they roll over, they're on the open market, and they're no longer in there as first-time affordable. The county's not doing that any longer. They're putting 99-year covenants on their 50?
It's on 50.
They're still at 50, but they're talking about 99. And then there is the whole raft of specialized funding sources, which is usually what we would like to talk about in affordable housing. The technical side of it, how difficult it is to structure the deal. It's very boring, and that's why I'm not talking about that, because that's just the technicalities. So, but going back to this model, if you wish to create a community that has diversity, in which your emergency workers can live, in which your elderly and your handicapped can live, then you have to manufacture the space in which to do that. And I had a very interesting meeting with Mayor Liz Felt and Ann McAndrews in Larchmont. And we were able to identify 3 very substantial, very viable sites for creating new neighborhoods and new affordable housing, or new mixed income housing. Because one of the interesting things with this is not to just say, create an affordable neighborhood. Create a mixed income neighborhood. Create a neighborhood that mirrors how we would like our communities to develop. So even, and Deb touched on this, even in our most developed communities, there's abandoned property, there's brownfield land, there are possibilities, there's county-owned land. It just requires a completely different mindset than the, here we are, it's completely built up, it's impossible. And this is just a fascinating and interesting opportunity, so thank you.
Wow.
So if anybody has questions, we can try to address them. It is, what are we at, 10 of 9? Is that right? But we do have a few minutes for questions. Nina.
I have 2 questions for you. First question is, did you say that there was a summary judgment that was granted?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a finding of fraud in that summary judgment?
No.
In the settlement, did you admit to fraud?
No, absolutely not.
In the event, after all of this, that you're not able to comply with the settlement, what does the settlement contain with respect to any repercussions on the community for non-compliance within 7 years?
Nina's asking basically what happens if we can't achieve our agreed upon goals. We have agreed to build 750 units over the next 7 years that meet the guidelines that we've sort of tried to address, that you see blue areas, green areas. We have a federal monitor who has been assigned to us, who will work with us almost in a mediator kind of role to help us establish this housing. The county's not in the business of building affordable housing, but the county and the use of the funds that we have been asked and we have appropriated money to put aside will be used to basically ensure the development of this housing, to make sure that we can reach out and work with developers. If in the settlement agreement, if we don't reach our goal and we have not been given any leeway on it, there are penalties that we will be charged, that are daily penalties for not meeting these. We are looking at this though much more optimistically and I think pragmatically. I don't think personally, and I think I speak on behalf of a number of the legislators, I don't think we will have a problem reaching this goal. I think this is actually, and I don't want to sound Pollyanna-ish, but I do think that in the end, this is going to help us achieve what we've been wanting. Jeremy spoke about what do you do about your emergency workers. When I sat on the town board with Supervisor O'Keefe and with Steve Altieri, the town administrator, we would have a blizzard that was predicted. And knowing that in order to get our streets plowed, we had to have workers drive down from Orange County, where they could afford to live, they would somehow have to try to get down here to plow these streets. But they would have to drive through even worse blizzard conditions. So there were people that were making arrangements to spend the night down in the garage so they could plow. I mean, this is heinous. You don't live like that. You need, in order to live, and Cheryl Louie can speak to this in all of the work she's done on planning for Westchester County and what Westchester County should look like, you need to be able to, and this county, even though we may have originally been settled as this exclusive enclave, we actually were settled as little, and you can read about this in the book by the Hudson River Museum, we were originally little exclusive communities surrounded by helper communities. What happened was we gentrified all the helper communities and made them all unaffordable. So now we're completely living surrounded by unaffordability and still wanting the services and the protections and the teachers and the librarians and the police and the sanitation workers and everybody else to work with us and make a community work, but we don't have any place for them to live. We're so sorry. So in the end, I think personally that this is going to be a real blessing to all of our communities.
I just wanted to add something to that on behalf of the administration. As you know, the county's Fair and Affordable Housing Program has a long-standing, the county's Fair and Affordable Housing Program has a long track record of success. And many years ago, there was a Rutgers study commissioned under the direction of our Housing Opportunities Commission. And at that point in time, there were many thousands of units identified as being necessary throughout the county to address the issues that Judy raised about the need for this housing throughout our communities. So when we look at 750 versus 6,000 that we recommend and have been recommending for many years, we don't find this to be an insurmountable task. And we're hoping that with the attention that's been placed on it and all of our best efforts to really focus on bringing this model to light for the country, that we should have no problem reaching 750 in 7 years. The funding that is allocated is also very similar to what our actual contribution usually is on a per unit basis. And really, you know, it's full steam ahead for us, and the administration is excited to get this done because this has been a priority anyway. And so we're hoping that the entire community will kind of rise to the occasion with us and say, you know, we've all been talking about providing units for ball fields, and everyone is in favor of it, but now we have this extra impetus to get it done. And so 750 to us does not seem like an onerous task. It's actually something we welcome, and we hope we get more done.
Okay.
Doreen.
Yeah, if this sounds great, I'm a little concerned, what is being done to ensure that when we reuse existing properties or storefronts, that we're not displacing poor people to meet our mandate? What is the assurance?
What is the assurance that we're not displacing people who are currently living in affordable housing in order to create affordable housing?
That's actually a really good question. And the county has looked at not only in that situation, because we don't want to do anything with relocation, especially of the people who are, you know, most in need of affordable housing. So we'll work with the property owner. In some cases, if there's any vacancy, we'll move people around so that they end up back in their unit, but it's refurbished. You know, in certain larger developments, I think if anyone in the group has heard about the Mitchell-Lama housing program, it built affordable housing in the 60s and 70s. All of those affordability terms are coming up. Very big issue. And we've worked with a number of developers to preserve those units. And the same thing is they also were old, the buildings were at the end of their useful life. They really needed to be refurbished. So with the county, the state funding, and a number of other sources, a developer would step in, purchase the building, refurbish it, and we'll have another 40, 50 years of useful life. So we're very conscious of making sure people are not taken out of their properties.
Over here. Oh, yes.
Hi, Richard Winslow with Washingtonville. I had just a quick question just in terms of the number. You said 750 units over the next 7 years. So if my math is correct, that's about 170 units a year. How was that number arrived at?
well, it's not that easy, but I'll turn it to Sue. Because we have steps that we have to
Right.
meet along the way.
Yeah, there are timetables and benchmarks written into the stipulation. Originally, obviously, in the course of negotiation, we sought a longer term or a lower number. This was the number that the federal government insisted upon in the timeline. I was not part of that negotiation, but my understanding is that it has been deemed to be something that is certainly doable. We have our benchmarks, and they're outlined in the stipulation, relate to building permits and financing approvals. And so there's sort of a sliding scale throughout the years. Our first obligation is in 2011. So we have quite a lot of time to start to gear up and look at that low-hanging fruit and see what we can kind of wrap up in the first year. And you know, really for us, people are coming out of the woodwork. Our spreadsheet of contacts is growing by the day. Developers have ideas, property owners have ideas, elected officials have ideas, and it's really exciting. And we can't keep up with the meetings. We're just scheduling as quickly as we can, taking in all ideas, and you know, our hope is that it's really not a problem.
Mariana.
Yes, Mariana.
My question is, you know, you mentioned that you're working with private enterprises as well as government. So how is the oversight in terms of any possible conflict of interest are being looked at? And the other question is, following up on how do you reach that number, do you have the data of how many people are not housed or underhoused in Westchester County?
Yeah, and I think when I was touching on the Rutgers study that was done maybe a decade ago, the need at that time was for probably 6,000 units in that area. The need is so much greater than the 750 units. This 750 units is not going to solve the need for fair and affordable housing in the county, but it's a start, and it's going to happen on an expedited basis. And hopefully, our hope is that as communities that have not traditionally had as much of this housing see it and understand that it's beautiful and it's part of the character of the community, and that these are contributing members of their community that work hard and pay their taxes, and their kids go to school, and it's part of a community, as Jeremy was talking about, that's mixed generational, mixed income, diverse. It's good for everybody, and so we're hoping it kind of demystifies what we've seen as a little bit of a resistance to this, and hopefully, you know, this will have a great impact on our community. It won't fix it, but it's getting us there. And as far as oversight, the administration is you know, my background is not in housing. I'm managing the housing team because my background is in compliance and managing consent orders and governmental relations with the federal government and the state. And so basically, working with the experts in the housing area, I'm the liaison to the monitor, to the federal government, to the Board of Legislators, and to municipal officials. I'm an attorney, and you know, my goal is to make sure that the monitor is happy and the federal government is happy at all times. And you know, again, we work with developers, we work with nonprofit agencies all the time. We don't see this as anything new. We just see it as there's a requirement for a certain number of units, but we know how to do this. We've been doing it, we've been putting the financing together, we've been managing these transactions on a very transparent basis. Even when, you know, going back to the settlement, when you look at the housing we've built, the deals we've put together, the diverse mix of people who live in those units, there is nothing to say that our approach has been anything less than exemplary, aside from this reporting issue. And so we really believe that we're doing this the right way, and that it will be as transparent as it needs to be. Commissioner Sally was there, Commissioner Mulligan. We went through all of these issues, and it all goes to our best efforts. They need to understand at the federal level what it is our local challenges are. You know, with respect to transportation, if you look at the income levels, there is a consideration as to who rides our buses and who doesn't traditionally, that the income levels may support people with vehicles of their own. And we're going to have to look at all those issues. But we're doing it with the monitor, and I think he very much appreciates the opportunity to be educated because he needs to understand why we don't have bus lines running through Lewisboro and what the situation is with the New York City watershed and all of that. And I think, even a couple of hours meeting was not enough. We could have spent days with him on the issues of the watershed alone. So we will continue to educate him, and what we've said is that as projects come up, if there is a need to reach out to New York City, reach out to the MTA, get support, broad-based support from intergovernmental agencies, we will do that, and we will try to cobble together the best projects we can given the circumstances that we are facing.
Sure. I throw in, it's
Stand up, Cheryl.
It's very opportune right now from a transportation perspective, because with the plans to rebuild the Tappan Zee Bridge, there is a necessity to look at transportation throughout the county. If they do ever rebuild the bridge and bring bus rapid transit over the bridge, then we need feeder lines to support that system that go north-south and east-west so that everything can get to that 287 corridor or move around the county differently. And so, working with the state Department of Transportation and Metro North on the bridge has also created a whole secondary set of work that's going on the transportation system. On Monday, November 16th, I think from something like 10 to 4, there's an all-day set, or 8 to 4, there's an all-day session at the county center, which is actually open to anybody, on transit-oriented development and how you do smart growth and what that means from a transportation perspective. So for those of you that are interested in that topic as an adjunct, it comes from the rebuilding of the bridge, but it ties in very clearly with planning throughout Westchester County. And the planning department is meeting first with all of the communities along with 287 that would be first affected by having stations added to their communities for this bus rapid transit system. But it will trickle down, and we'll have to plan with all communities throughout the county. The idea is then to connect all of the north-south train lines, the 3 that run through Westchester, with a bus system that coordinates and allows you to move around the county to answer these questions in a way that we've never been able to before. So that meeting on Monday, November 16th, will be a very interesting training session. And there too, the state of New York is modeling in Westchester for a program throughout the state where they help people create transit-oriented developments where it makes sense so that people of all ages and ethnicities and fair housing can all stay in place and have greater mobility.
Carol. We have a number of municipal leaders in our audience, and I'd like to ask them, what is the impact of what we're discussing on the possible review of zoning changes to implement this program? What possible zoning changes may be needed?
Well, maybe Steve would be better to answer that, but I think that I'll ask the legislators up here, our experts. I think this is zoning neutral. I don't think that this agreement in any way, shape, or form has any mandate to change local zoning. I may be wrong on that.
No, it's the nuances of the stipulation. It does not require any community to change their local zoning. However, it does require the Westchester County to promote a model zoning ordinance that speaks to certain issues, including inclusionary zoning, the banning of local residency preferences. And to that end, while we're going to work with the municipalities to develop these recommended provisions of a model zoning ordinance, there will be restrictions on the county's ability to give out CDBG money as well as open space legacy money with respect to communities should they have local residency preferences in their zoning codes and a few other items. Basically, we need to have each community verify that they're affirmatively furthering fair housing before they will get any more CDBG money or legacy money.
Define, maybe you did it this morning when I was outside. There's a difference between fair housing and affordable housing.
Yes.
And the whole crux of this lawsuit was based on the fact that the county had not affirmatively gone after, quote, fair housing, not affordable housing. But it's a very important distinction, even though it's a distinction without difference in a way. But I mean, as far as the legal theory.
I think the
Fair
legal.
housing.
Yes,
Yeah.
fair housing is housing that promotes diversity of racial and ethnic populations. Now, the thrust of the lawsuit was that in our annual reporting, our focus was more on income than racial and ethnic diversity. And it's my belief that that was primarily because the demographic information and research had been done, but that there was more of an understanding that income was the barrier in Westchester County rather than race. And so in taking an approach that was largely race neutral, and I think in terms of the reporting, our process was affordability is the largest obstacle. It matters not what your race or your ethnicity is in Westchester, it's really a matter of money. And if you can afford to live in a community, the barriers are income, not race or ethnicity based. So
which has been accepted by the federal government for years.
for many years, we have gotten accolades from the federal government for our program. Again, when you look at the diversity of the units that we have assisted in building, there is a tremendous mix of racial and ethnic minorities, as well as seniors, workforce. It promotes all of the good things that the communities here have an interest in, because there is a need to provide for our seniors and there is a need to provide for our workforces as well. So there is going to be some tie. It's not something that we have finalized yet in discussions with HUD, but we're working on it as to what the municipalities would have to attest to in order to show that they're affirmatively furthering fair housing should they seek CDBG money or open space legacy money in the future.
Now, the one thing about the zoning, which I just want to follow up on, the town of Mamaroneck, Judy was a driving force here, tried to take a look at the post road to see whether we could change zoning to get higher levels of, you know, put it up 3 stories or whatever, with the direct intent of trying to provide more diversity as far as income. Now, most people think you can't, because the federal law says you can't discriminate on the basis of race in housing. So we never thought of it. We're going to get more X or Y ethnicity. We figured that we would get a different level of economic ability to pay, which ipso facto opened it to all kinds of people that at this point couldn't do it. But so we were thinking of that, and it's something we still have to keep thinking of. But I do think something that's very important that we have to think about. Judy said how hard it is to get policemen, firemen, and people like that to be able to live here. One of the reasons we were able to do that with Homicks Park is we had tiers, and it said if you work for the town or the school district, you can be in tier 1, you can have a preference. Well, now if you take the federal money, you can't do this anymore. So you may have all these local people, I mean people that live in Dutchess County that come here, but now you can't prefer them to anybody in this huge pool that might be coming from Patterson, New Jersey, or Bridgeport, or, you know, Stamford, or any place. So that the local preference is not really redounding to our benefit to get people to work in the town who don't have to move 50 miles away. So it's a double-edged sword here.
That's an issue that we're discussing with HUD, that we haven't completed discussing with HUD yet, because what they have said to us, we raised that exact issue. And they said, our concern is local residency preferences, because in many of the local zoning ordinances, you get points if you're a fireman or a school teacher or a local employee, but you also get points if you already live there. And what HUD is saying is that you're preserving the status quo, where there's a lack of diversity, you're preserving the status quo by saying people who already live here get preference to keep living here. And what they want is for us to eliminate local residency preferences. That kind of begs the bigger question of, if you're affirmatively furthering fair housing, if you say half my units are going to go to my workforce, but you still affirmatively market it so that everyone, and presumably your hiring practices are obviously not discriminatory either, that that may not be against the principles of what HUD is looking to do. The question will become, for the 750 units, if there's a local preference tied to some of the new units that are created, will they be able to count? And that question comes back to, is it a tier so that only those, if there's 10 units and the first, and there's 50 employees that want that from the town, whether that pretty much excludes everyone, or if within the point system, there's only a small added bump to those who are workforce. And that's something we have to work through with HUD, because we have already advocated the issue that the interests of workforce are, as well as seniors, are very critical to communities. And their response on a tentative basis was their real issue was local residency requirements, which makes sense in the context of not preserving the status quo of population. So we'll keep working on that issue. And I think when we start to meet with the municipal officials and develop those terms for the local zoning ordinance, we will go back to them more informed with the concerns of the municipalities.
And just to clarify, in the town of Mamaroneck, the zoning, the way the zoning is now structured, it would not be an issue. There are zoning districts in the town that would allow multifamily. We have a tower apartment zone. We actually have a floating zone that we can use that mixes commercial and residential. So for the town, the zoning will not be really an impediment to think about this.
First of all, this is an essential question that we have, because as you may know, the village of Larchmont has an agreement with the county concerning 35 units of workforce housing. So putting that whole question aside though, but because it does have an income level, the level of income should not be in excess of 80% of the county average, which for a family of 4 is about $84,000, which is why I can remember it. The agreement, the stipulation, has several sections that talks about income levels. And maybe if you could make that clear, because there's been a lot of language about that nothing can exceed 50% of the average county income, which is pretty low when you think about an average and then you take half of that as being the limit to qualify for some of these apartments if you are talking about rental. So if you could talk about, please give us a description for the benefit of the whole group of how income levels are discussed in the stipulation. I think it would be helpful to us all.
Actually, the settlement provides several different levels. For home ownership, it is 80% of the area median income, and I think you're roughly accurate at $84,000 is the maximum. Remember, again, just going through the mortgage payments and that kind of thing. Our goal is to make sure it's affordable to a range of income, so we tend to underwrite it for 70% of their median income, so people between that level and 80%, which is 84,000, can afford the units. And developers like that because they're kind of assured that there's a larger group of people who can afford it. The rental properties, in the settlement specifically, is targeted at 65% for the bulk of them, and then some portion of that at 50%. So it really does provide the range. And if you think of people on Social Security, for example, they're way below. They're like at 25-30% of the area median income. So I think that what the settlement's trying to get towards is really, again, this idea of income diversity. 60% of the area median income for a family of 4 then would be, just above $60,000. And so I think we're probably not that far off.
Yeah. Here's the problem, that there's an inherent dilemma between affordable housing at these levels, income level limits, and municipal workers. And so if you have someone like a brand new policeman or a brand new teacher, well then they get married, and then they blow the income limits. So there is that inherent problem there of how you have workforce housing and married couples who are both municipal workers, and how do you handle that? And that
make the move to Dutchess.
Make the move to Bedford, which is Nyack, where our police chief lives, and so there is the inherent dilemma there, and I don't know how you're going to handle it, but it is a problem, especially since we already do have an agreement for 35 apartments with the county.
Is it a case where somebody's already moved in, they were income qualified, moved in, and their income goes up? They're not told to leave. If it's rental, the rent might go up. If they get, they move in, they get married, their income goes up, and they might end up paying more so that their rent is more proximate to the open market, and that, you know, most of the time people will then move up and move out.
4 children.
Hey, in that case, they probably really are income qualified, because then there's a family of 6, and the income level for that is, you know, starting to get pretty high. In the case where it's ownership, and again, a family purchases a, you know, a condo or townhome or something, if their income goes up, again, they're not displaced. We only test for the income at the time of purchase. Now, at some point, they have the 4 children, and they say, this place is too small, we need to move out, our income's sufficient. They go on and purchase a unit in the open market. The unit then is sold to an income qualified family. So there's no idea of that once people are in, that they're then kicked out because their income changes. You know, the initial concept is if they're not income qualified to start with, that might be a local conversation. There are some state programs, at least for home ownership, that will assist people for the first home purchase for the Sunny Main mortgages. They'll go up to 120% of the area median income. So it's, you know, the county has certain targets, but there might be other assistance out there that we don't have any direct involvement with.
Yeah, I just, Anne's right on track with that issue. The 726 Old White Plains, in going through the approval and permitting and financing process, lost any local preference, and that was a matter of grievance. We still hear it. But no local employees were allowed to live there. But the reality is exactly as Anne describes it. When we were recruiting tenants up to, I think, a maximum income of $45,000, even the starting out municipal employee or nurse's aide with spouse is over that limit. So I have a very simple solution. This local preference question really is a serious question. It can't be tackled with federal funds, so double the target.
What did you say, Jeremy?
Double the target. Let's create 1,500 units, and with Fannie Mae home ownership money, Federal Home Loan Bank, which will go up to 140%. Let's create mixed income units, but recognize that the federal money is only going to come in for the 60% portion, and have these other units to address this burning question, and let's move on.
Oh, we've really gone beyond our limits. Usually we're so disciplined. We end right at 9, but this was just too important. And I thank you all so much for staying the course, and I know there are many more issues and questions. Feel free, let's keep discussing any who can stay, and if our experts can stay. It's really been wonderful. Thank you all. And remember, very good. All right.
Yeah, call me on my phone.
Yes. How does this tie in with the public transportation system in the county, particularly in the north, and with Commissioner Larry Sally?
One of the stipulations in the settlement agreement is that not only must the housing be built in census blocks that reflect the desired, population, which would be under a certain percentage of African Americans and below a certain percentage of Hispanics. It also needs to be near public transportation and near employment. So it does. I think some of the northern Westchester communities are, looking at that. Luckily, the train line does run throughout Westchester, while the bus system does not. The trains do, so that will have some kind of that will come into play. The other issues, and this is where the implementation, where the municipalities are really, really going to need to be very involved in all of this. Not only do we need to look at transportation and employment, but we also need to look at the fact that a lot of our northern suburbs are not sewered. They're all on septic.